Hello, welcome back for another episode of the Next Gen 15 podcast. Episode 3, I think we're on, of season 3,
Yeah.
which coincides rather nicely with round 3 of the Academy League. Will Roberts alongside me, Angus Savage, as ever. And as ever, you can get in touch with us on at Next Gen 15 and on at Next Gen 15 Clubhouse, where Will's been getting some nice stuff going out lately, and we're going to be digging into a little bit of it actually later on because there's been some cool stuff happening over the course of last week. First of all, though, Will, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Angus. It's getting towards the business end of Academy League rugby, and age grade Six Nation tournaments are on the horizon. So it's a pretty exciting time to be in our sphere. I hope you're well as well.
Yeah, very well, very well. Back from holiday.
Yeah,
Don't seem to have missed
I think
too much.
no, I think it's the most I've ever seen a Scotsman tan. It's quite
Yeah,
impressive.
I've gone from a sort of light blue shade to just merely white. So that's done some serious work. Give me another 3 months, and I might start looking vaguely like a human
Exactly.
being. No, it's good to be back, and I missed the big freeze, so
Yeah.
that was all right. Although big freeze, bit of a shame actually. We've been doing a few previews of some of the school stuff that's coming up this week, and God, we lost a lot of rugby last week to the big freeze. Don't know if it was being called the big freeze, but
No, but
from
we'll
afar,
roll with it because it's
yeah,
brilliant. I do like the term "the big freeze." Yeah, it's sort of the perils of the sort of calendar as it is that we as a sport decide to play in the most difficult months to possibly put on any type of grass sport. So come with it, what may, and well. It throws all our pitches, so it does look as though touch wood this weekend's gonna be fairly plain sailing up and down the country, and we hopefully resume to normal programming.
yeah, we should be all right, shouldn't we? Yeah, we're veering dangerously near one of my favourite hobby horses, which is that rugby should be a spring summer sport rather than a winter sport. But we won't get into it because
No.
I'm consistently told that I'm incorrect and a non-traditionalist, despite being quite traditional.
Yeah. No, I think that's potentially a topic for sort of more episode 30 rather than episode 3.
Yeah, we need to draw the viewers in before we really chuck in too much of that sort of stuff. We did get Academy League rugby last week though.
Hmm.
That managed to all go ahead, and I guess we might as well crack on into it. And I suppose there's nowhere to start other than Bath. They
Yeah.
just keep rolling.
They do, and I think from is what has been brilliant, especially over this last week, is that I think we've seen the most amount of this competition, e.g., like through social media, than we ever have. So me and you, obviously, we can't get to all of these games, all especially played all at once this weekend. You definitely can't. You're on holiday, so it's sometimes really hard for us to come, and we usually just get sort of score lines and maybe a few try highlights here and there to kind of paint a picture. But we've actually been able to see quite a lot of this Bath Bristol
Yeah,
game through both teams' social medias, and from what it looks like, Bath are kind of basing their sort of attack on defense, if that makes sense.
yeah,
A lot of the stuff that Bath have been putting out, these massive hits and shots that they've been putting in across the first two, of course, their first two fixtures, and are able to build momentum and build points like that. They've got such a strong pack.
yeah.
And who really seem to be working across the park, and then especially when you've got someone like James Inigo, whose game management and transitional play is so strong. He can turn defense into attack so quickly. That seems to be what's striking a chord in a Bath perspective. And Bristol, this is the harsh nature of Academy League rugby, is that if you lose two games, I mean they've played Saracens and Bath in their first two games, arguably two of the sort of top two favourites
Yeah.
in this southern bracket. But it's the way the fixtures lie, and it looks like as though it's going to be a tough task for them to try and claw their way back into a sort of third, fourth, fifth, sixth sort of playoff, losing two games on the spin. But they'll be wanting more out of those fixtures, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%, I guess. And I mean, they've got Gloucester at home this weekend. I suppose they're probably going to be looking at that and thinking, that's probably a better judge of where they are. Yeah, Gloucester have been ticking along all right. I know they lost to Sarries, but a good performance there. But the Bar thing's interesting. I think obviously we're seeing it in clip form, I suppose, above all else. But they look to me like they're playing as well as playing really well. They seem to be mirroring the first team in a lot of ways, which not every academy necessarily does. Where it's strong pack, fly half that knows how to run a game, has a bit of magic alongside as well. But it's almost that sort of, well, if we get things right from 1 to 10, then we can just go play with what's outside that. Sort of very similar to the first team. I mean, oversimplifying it there. I'm sure they tell me it's a lot more complex than that. But fundamentally, that's kind of the game plan, and it seems to be working really well. But also, maybe a bit of a sign for other sides of trying to get that sort of thread from under 18s right the way up to the first team, so that you're not just bringing through individuals, but you're bringing through a style of play that can potentially sit for the next decade.
Mm. It's something that I know we've spoken about it quite a lot. But I know, ironically, Pat Lam was one of the first to speak about how important it is to create a DNA from top to bottom across their club. He even spoke about it being a DNA that they pass into their women's team. Obviously, there's going to be no transferable assets between the men's and women's clubs, but they want all their teams to sort of try and play the same way, within reason. And especially when you've got these age grade teams, and you can, if you've got a stable coaching setup like Bath seem to have now,
Yeah,
as opposed to sort of 5, 6 years ago when things were in a bit more turmoil for them, they have a chance to really sort of set a dynasty with their under 14s, under 15s, so that this can continue on. And look, they've kind of over the last 2, 3 years become a bit of an academy powerhouse almost out of nowhere, and
yeah.
they won't want to put their foot off the brakes, off the gas, in fact. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here from a stylistic point of view.
Yeah, really looking forward to seeing it. They're top quality side, and we'll look ahead properly because they're one of the Sunday games. But sort of sticking on the what happened last week theme, the other side that's got absolute max points in the in the South Pool is Saracens. We said last time we spoke that one of the key things for Saracens was two big away games to kick off the campaign. If you go max points from those two, you're in a hell of a position, and that's exactly what they've done. They might not be sort of as all conquering as Bath look like at the moment,
Yeah.
but 2 wins from 2 max points, they're in exactly the same position, and probably looking at things now and going, well, actually, we've got through that sort of potentially tricky start by going away twice. Now it's sort of back on home turf against a good Exeter side, but they're probably thinking, well, we're in a hell of a position now.
Absolutely, and I think from what I've heard and understood, they had to win slightly differently this week as opposed to that Bristol game. I think that Bristol game they managed to keep Bristol at sort of arm's length throughout the whole game. Gloucester were leading for quite a lot of this a lot of this fixture. Saracens pulled away within the last sort of 10, 20 minutes. So they've won two games in two different ways, okay, which can almost sort of put you in slightly good stead, heading into sort of following fixtures. I also think their fixture list kind of lies quite well because yes, they now in context because yes, they've managed to get through those first two games. If those had gone very differently, then this fixture list would look a lot more foreboding. That's just kind of
Yeah,
the way that these things go. They've now got Exeter at home. Exeter are coming off the back of back-to-back home losses, and they're travelling up to North London on the day. They will start their day at 5:30 because they've got a 1 p.m. kickoff at the Cernex Stadium. So
brutal.
you can imagine the odds are stacked within the favour of Saracens there. They then go, I think, away to Bath before going home to Harlequins in their final two games. Two absolutely massive games. That Bath game is certainly going to be one to watch in round four. But then they go home to Harlequins in a North London derby before heading on to finals day. So I think in terms of like a momentum builder, It's going to come at these fixtures sort of hit at quite a nice time. They've learned how to win well. They've learned how to win gritty in these
Mm.
opening two games. You'd expect them to put up a good show against Exeter, considering just the sort of logistical situations of that fixture, which treat them so well into their toughest game against Bath. Look, I think they're certainly a team that we need to keep an eye on because they seem to be playing really well and working really well together.
Yeah, they've started really nicely, and as you say, sort of two different types of wins, and now a massive game against Exeter. And actually, to be fair to Exeter, hats off to them in a way, in that we said one of the keys for them was how you bounce back from the Bath game. All right, they didn't get the victory, but what they did was put in a real shift in a really tight game against Quins, and so they can probably look into this Sarries game and go, all right, well, this is a tricky away trip, as you say, the 5:30 start, no one needs that. But they've given themselves something to hang on to in terms of performance level and competition within the game. But let's have a little look at Quins, because that's 2 from 2 for them as well. Yeah, they've started off nicely. Gritty side, clearly, because that's two incredibly tight wins. And I think actually the fact that Sarri's game against Gloucester was also quite gritty probably says a lot about Quins, in that that's a very similar sort of result for the two of them against that Gloucester side. So I think Quins are looking strong. Probably, I reckon, heading into this sort of academy season, you'd have said they'd be a good side, but probably they'd have to work for it. And I suppose in a way that's what they've done, in that it's two tight wins, but looking tidy.
Yeah, I don't think they've necessarily made it easy for themselves. I know that Gloucester game, scoring it in the last minute, really kind of got their sails up. And look, as we say, I think Bath was such an exception. They made it look quite easy to go down to Exeter and do a job in Exeter. It's not. It's really not. And Harlequin saw that this weekend. But look, they played some great rugby from what I've seen. Angus, I'd love to hear your opinions on Sean Sharp, because he seems to be, not only has he got an idyllic name for a sort of flying outside back, but he seems to be sort of that sort of token Harlequin that can make something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And look, he looked to do that again this weekend.
Yeah, they've always got one or two, haven't they, that can just do magical things. Do you know what the real thing I'm hoping with Sean Sharp is that he's going to be available for Seaford College at the Seaford Tens at the weekend. It's Sunday the 26th of Jan. We're going to have that one live, and I just so hope that the players are available. It is a rest week for the Academy League, so I'm hoping players are going to be available, because God, it'd be good to see him on a tens field with a bit of space, wouldn't it? He's certainly looking lively. I think the other thing that's relevant with Quins as well, and kind of is relevant in terms of Sharp as well. They're doing this without their fly half and the England man Felix Champagne, or Felix Champagne actually, I think nowadays, who you would expect to be the talisman for this side, and there's still Matt Jones is in there at 10 from Gordon's, is doing a good job. In fact, may possibly have ended up with a sort of 10-12 link with Champagne, potentially, because he's been doing that a lot with the England side. But that you're seeing guys step up around him, and Sharp at fullback is definitely one of those. He's been looking great. I want to shout out Elliot Williams as well, though, skippering the side. He's absolutely brilliant player. He's I spoke. I think it was last time we spoke. I spoke about being in that England under-18 camp before Christmas. He was in there, and I wouldn't be revealing any trade secrets to say that his voice was a dominant voice continually through that camp. And you saw him lead Gordon's to the ace title. He's captaining Quins now. He's been playing a bit of six, bit in the second row. He's a massive lad. One of the big issues I suspect with him is that when he's not playing at the top end, he's a difficult boy to put up in the lineup. Absolutely fine once he's in the professional ranks, no one will have a problem. But actually, it causes a few problems at the moment. But he's a brilliant player, and if we're looking at guys to pick out who could have a long career, Sharp is looking particularly sharp, as you might say, at fullback.
Yes,
But
there
but
you go.
Williams,
That's why it's the name's such idyllic.
exactly. But Williams in the pack he's looking monstrously strong.
Would you say when it comes to Quins that obviously most years that we look at their under 18s team, they impressively list loads and loads of schools because their catchment area is so varied. They usually have an abundance of schools, abundance of clubs, and this almost like a barbarian side, which is usually quite fitting for the way that Harlequins play. But I think because of the success of Gordon's
Yeah.
this year, they've been allowed to have that spine. And in games like this, you'd imagine if you've got a 15 of players from all loads of different schools that don't really know each other as well or inside out, that maybe they wouldn't be able to find a way to win against Gloucester. Maybe they wouldn't be able to get a 2-point win against Exeter Chiefs. Could that be the difference maker for them in what have been such gritty games?
Yeah, it could be because I mean, if you look at sort of traditionally sides that have done well, and this is not to knock the Ace competition in many ways, it's to speak of its quality. Is they often have 7, 8, 9 guys in their team who are from that Ace program. Now, not all of them are getting contracted. Maybe not even half of them are getting contracted. But what it does is provide exactly what you say. It provides a sort of spine in the team where people know what's going on. They know how each other play, which allows people around them to flourish. And Quins haven't really had that because Gordon's are a relatively new side. Over the last year or so, they've become a very, very good side. And suddenly Quins can build that spine. You know, it's something that most sides do, and then it just allows you to just have players, you know, often many players. You know, if you look at a Bath where Beach and Cliff are, you know, fill in a good chunk of that side, but they have major contributions from the likes of Millfield or Kingswood or whoever else it might be. But having that sort of core of players that just know each other makes it much easier to get people to fit in around them. Saracens may be the outlier there, where Oaklands College probably haven't given them almost a bit like Quins in the past. Oaklands maybe haven't given them as much as they necessarily needed. So Sarries have almost gone another way with their selection and gone really varied in terms of where they're selecting from. But they're probably the outlier on that front. And then the other extreme example, I suppose, is Exeter, where almost everyone is from either Exeter College or Truro College, and there's space maybe for one or two. Although interestingly, if you look at the 20 squad at the moment with Ben Cohen, who for a long time was the only player that wasn't in their Ace setup that's getting there. So it's a sort of it's a quality of the Ace program that you have lots of players who are there or thereabouts. Obviously, only a few are going to get contracted because that's the nature of the beast. But it allows you to sort of build a team around them. So I think it's definitely been a positive for Harlequins, and you know, you got to heap a bunch of praise on the guys down at Gordon's and what they've been doing, because you know they were a relatively new side and they've become a serious outfit.
Absolutely, and look, we hope that they can continue to produce like that, because it's great to have these Ace schools to continue to provide. I think they're such an unsung hero in the in the A-Trade game. So that'd be certainly interesting. Looking ahead, obviously, 2 more games of round 2 left for us to talk about. One of which were Leicester Tigers, Newcastle, and obviously Leicester getting the win. Newcastle on their sort of first appearance in this competition. It's never easy to be the team that sort of start at round 2, because you sort of end up sort of tripping under the radar. But from what I've seen, it looked as though Newcastle made this really difficult for a Leicester team that absolutely put away Yorkshire in that opening round.
Yeah, I mean, impressive start from Newcastle. I mean, it's almost funny saying that, isn't it, on the back of a defeat? But
Yeah.
but Tigers are a good side. We know that, and you know, sitting top of the table, two from two. The only side in the North Pool at the moment that have done that. Although obviously with the cancellation in round 1, it's been a bit of a funny section. But yeah, Newcastle knew they needed to work hard, and we spoke about it in the build-up that they've had an almost disproportionate number of players coming through their ranks in recent years. Looks like another side that is stuffed full of players that have got a good chance of making it into the into the senior academy at the end of this season. So an impressive start for them. But Tigers 2 from 2, looking strong. Big tests to come. Who have they got this weekend? In fact, they've got their week off, so they've got sort of that slightly awkward thing where you're looking at everyone else around you sort of making ground, and they're probably sitting there going, "Well, we've done our job, 2 from 2. Let's see where the land lies at the end of this round." So a strong start from Tigers, but I think Newcastle can take heart from that. They're
Yeah.
getting into sort of bonus point territory away from home for them is probably a good place to be, and then look to pick up your victories at home and see where you shake out at the end of it, probably.
Yeah, and from what I've heard, they were leading at half time, 12-7. They held the lead for the majority of the time either side of the half. I know George Marsh got a score in the opening sort of 10 minutes. We know just what beast he is at the back of a scrum. Talbot kicking his kicks where possible to sort of try and extend leads, and look, Leicester are looking like the Leicester Tigers Academy of old,
Yeah,
which we continue to marvel. And yeah, it looks as though they could be fronting up for a charge towards that top spot. But again, I think with the combination of bye weeks and that postponed Northampton game in the first week, this Northern group is going to look basically unguessable
yeah,
until the final round.
yeah. I mean, even if we just I pull the table up now, if I just run you through it, you've got Tigers sitting top, played 2-1-2. But the only other side that's played two is the Yorkshire Academy. Saints and Newcastle played one each. Sale Sharks haven't played yet, unfortunately, because of that cancellation or hopefully postponement in round one. So I mean, it's going to be final round before we even really have a sense of what that pool looks like. But I tell you what, judging by Northampton Saints, they're going to be in the mix.
Oh,
That was 53-26 against Yorkshire Academy. I mean, one of those games that you sometimes get at Academy League where it just seems that there's tries coming from everywhere. But
yeah.
a hell of a start from Saints, who I know they're a determined group, because having got to the final back to back and not quite got over the line, I know that they've lost a few of the superstars, obviously from those 2 seasons, but they are seriously determined to try and just get over the line in a world where sort of the win and loss column is second to getting players through the system. I suspect Saints are probably above anyone else, feeling that the win loss column is one they really want to get right.
Absolutely, especially when I think this is quite a reset group. I think the last 2 years have almost come as a package in that they had I think in their under 18s final last year they had a lot of under 18s players, if that makes sense, as opposed to under
Yeah.
17s. And the previous year to that, obviously they're under 18s who are now technically under 20s if you think of it like that, second year academy, senior academy, what was so strong. So you had this selection of two incredibly strong years back to back. I mean, they were signing sort of over a half dozen each year into their senior academy, which is for a Northampton Saints side that pride themselves on these young superstars. It's a high threshold to meet
Oh yeah.
to get a senior academy contract in Northampton. And it seems that there's been bit of a reset. Obviously, the only sort of star continuum really across. I mean, since he was about 12, it seems,
Yeah.
is Eduardo Tadaro, who once again hit sort of headlines on social media with another fantastic break and score. I I'm really excited to see him playing at 13. We've obviously seen a lot of him at 15, a fair bit of him at 10.
Yeah.
And I think 13's kind of like that Goldilocks position for him. If he can get his defensive coordination bang on in tougher games, which is going to be sort of the key sort of crux point, the 13 shirt in an attacking sense allows him to use his pace and flair and skill, whilst also getting his hands on the ball a lot more than potentially he would at fullback, which
Yeah.
is what you want for a player of his quality. So I hope they might have struck a positional gold with Tadaro, Charlie Reid, Mark Copley. These guys know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Obviously, proof's in the pudding over the last 2 years, but as you say, they'll be absolutely gunning to get into that final on the 16th of Feb and go one further because it's evaded them over the last 2 years in painful fashion.
Oh yeah, it'd be frustrating them endlessly. I tell you what, on Tadara as well. I love the idea. I mean, I don't want to heap too much pressure on him, but the idea of Menoncello and Tadaro as a centre combination in the years to come is pretty exciting. Like surely he's going all the way. Surely.
I mean, he was without his trademark blue scrum cap this week. I saw. That was always kind of like a key identifiable when he initially broke onto the scene. It'd be that guy in that navy blue scrum cap who's absolutely carving things up on the backfield. That's gone. So maybe we're seeing a Tadaro rebrand. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I don't know. Maybe he needs to get it back on. I always remember there was a quote. I think it was James Haskell who was talking about it. Always wear a bright scrum cap
Yeah.
if you're any good, because then everyone notices you and
Maybe
they can't take their
he's
eyes
got
off
to the
you.
level where he's qualified past that.
He's a known entity now. He doesn't need to worry about it.
Doesn't need identifiables like that scrum cap. But yeah, all the best to him. I hope that the Northampton Saints side can sort of kick on because they've had a bit of a stop start opening in this into this campaign.
Yeah, exactly. They'll be keen to crack on, and they've got a big game this weekend. And in fact, we might as well start looking ahead to this weekend. We've got Bristol. Well, 3 games. Sorry, I should say on Saturday. 2 games on Sunday. Bristol, Gloucester, Newcastle Saints, and Sarries Exeter on Saturday, and then Quins Bath and Yorkshire against Sale on Sunday.
Sale.
Yeah.
Didn't know they were in this competition.
Yeah, I know. Unbelievable. Poor guys have been twiddling their thumbs for 3 weeks now, just trying to desperately get out there. Finally, they get a go. I mean, we'll come around to that. I suppose we should start in some sort of chronological order and begin with Saturday. We might as well. Should we start with the north, seeing as we started with the south on the on what happened last week? Newcastle against Northampton. I mean, we've just been talking about Saints there. I can't see much beyond. As much as I say that Newcastle's performance at Leicester was impressive, I feel like Saints are that was a very, very tidy start to their campaign. All the things we've mentioned about the last 2 years, how much they want to lay down a bit of a marker. I look at that and I think it'd probably be quite close, but I think Saints come away with the win there.
Yeah, I'm actually quite torn on this fixture because I think Newcastle, even in the Premiership, is such a difficult place to go, regardless of their sort of position in the league standings, and that just comes down to the support they get. I think that's sort of something that can be transferable across all sort of the Yorkshire. Newcastle, Sale. Every time I've been to an Academy League finals day or an Academy League game, for that matter, they always seem to be the loudest voices, which is so important for these players that can sort of work off and thrive off that buzz. So up in Newcastle, Northampton, as we said, have had a stop-start. Look. This is a podcast to be different. I'm going to say that I think Newcastle might pull up the surprise of the under 18s league campaign and potentially get a gritty win, considering how well they did at Leicester to be in the lead for either side of half time after a really good performance. I think it was only sort of their last sort of 20 sort of minutes that had let them down. They conceded 2 late tries. I think that they might go one better and put down a real marker in this north bracket because look, then it would be completely all to play for.
It would be wide open, wouldn't it? Steve Diamond's going to be down to give you a big cuddle in a minute. He'll be loving this, absolutely loving this.
He's just on the phone. He's offering me 30 quid a week to come play for him. So
sounds about right, to be fair. No, as I say, I think it'd be a good game, that one, a good tight one. Um, Bristol against Gloucester, that really interests me because neither side with a victory yet. Both with two very different starts, though. Despite that, obviously Bristol have, been fairly well beaten a couple of times. Gloucester have been in really tight games. Where do you see this one going?
I think Bristol will be feeling relatively defeated. Just in the manner that like, there's certainly a way to lose. A lot of director of rugby say that quite a lot. Um, and I think Bristol will be very frustrated with the manner in which they've lost. They've allowed games and these look top sides. Bath and Saracens are the arguably two of the best sides in the Academy League as a whole. Forget North South bracket. So they've had super tough tests, but they've been kind of kept at arm's length throughout both sort of games. We've seen Bristol produce some brilliant tries and really free flowing sort of behaviour and capabilities, but I think Gloucester will be up and firing a lot more and can take a lot more positives out of their first two games and provide it into what is their sort of toughest sort of, well, it's difficult to phrase this. They're I don't want to say most winnable because I don't think any of these games are winnable, and I wouldn't want to. I think that's such a um discredit to Bristol and the side that they are. But I think Gloucester will be gunning for it, long and short, and I think they might provide an away win.
Yeah, I think this one could be sort of spectacular in a way.
Yes.
In that, I think both sides are going to be unbelievably motivated for it. Both sides are capable of scoring tries, and if you look at the way their first teams play, I think they're probably going to try and replicate that to whatever element they can. And both at the moment are playing hell for leather. So if we get a bit of that in the under 18 sides, we could be in for something pretty fun. I think probably, yeah. I mean, based on form at the moment, you'd say Gloucester have the edge, but Bristol at home, Bristol determined. If it's a dry track, let's
Yeah.
see. Could be good fun. Saracens Exeter, we sort of touched on this earlier, didn't we? When in the context of the way both of these two have started their campaign. Sarries obviously 2 from 2, Exeter looking for a first victory, but have obviously shown a big stride from week 1 to week 2. Sarries, big start week 1 and then an impressive niggly away win at Gloucester last time out. At home for the first time, Sarries, which we mentioned, Exeter with that early start to get themselves across for the 1 o'clock kickoff. Probably you've got to go. Saracens are the side to beat here, but Exeter are going to be determined. If they keep that rate of improvement, they could really cause some problems. But Saracens feeling like a very strong side at the moment.
Yeah, I think again circumstantial evidence of no one should be having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and go travel sort of 6 hours and then go immediately into the 1 p.m. kickoff is pretty brutal. And as I say, I think they're traveling down on the same day, which is going to throw up some sort of issues for them. Alternatively, obviously Saracens are yet to play at the Stone X. I also think that's a massive case is that a lot of academy sides obviously we say they play at home. They're playing like Gloucester, for example, are playing at Warwick. It couldn't be, you can't get many races
Yeah, very true.
further than Gloucester. So, but for Saracens to be playing at the home of Saracens, they'll be in that home changing room. There's just something about that that gives it a little bit of extra edge. I know that quite a lot of their first team are coming to watch this game as well. Again, sort of indicators like that that can obviously because their first team play on a Sunday, so they'll be there in support. Indicators like that that can just tick a team forward and push them forward, and obviously in contrast, Exeter having a really tough slog of it. I think yeah, as you say, you can't really look past Saracens, but we love to see sort of, I was about to say cup upsets. They're league upsets, aren't they, really? And we hope that Exeter put in a good performance to do themselves proud and give themselves an opportunity to end this league campaign quite strong.
Yeah, massively. I think that's so cool that the first team are going to be down there watching as well. I think that's. I'd like to see a lot of sides do that
Yeah,
when they can, because it's just it makes such a difference. I mean, just being able to have that touch point for these 18s kids of that could be you
yeah,
is massive. And having, I'm sure they'll get a chance to speak to them. Wouldn't surprise me if someone pops down into the change room and has a little word with them
yeah.
pre-game. Those little touches make all the difference. Sunday, I'm gonna start in the north again because there's a game that looks like an absolute belter to finish up on. So we'll start in the north again. Yorkshire hosting Sale Sharks. Sale Shark finally getting to play a game. Yorkshire haven't had the most enjoyable of starts. I'm sure they'd probably say a couple of tricky defeats, but against two very good sides in the East Midlands rivals, Leicester and Northampton. But home turf against a side that hasn't played yet makes this one feel quite open, really, in some ways.
Yeah, incredibly difficult to call. Um, and I think the only thing we can kind of go off of that Yorkshire are kind of the Bristol of this North bracket in that they've been put away on two occasions, but they've played two really arguably the top two most difficult teams in those particular brackets. But we don't know how Sale are going to turn up. This is the thing. We don't know where Sale are in this sort of ranking, and that we can go off assumptions and we can go off team sheets and sort of who they have in their squad, who we've seen at schoolboy level, and whether that can translate. And look, we know that this Sale side will pride themselves on their pack and their sort of spine of Kirkham players, and that's cut and paste from the last sort of 3 or 4 years of us covering this academy rugby. So we'll be intrigued to see. It's difficult to predict on something that you have such little information on. We can almost flip a coin, but you just going off sort of history and the
Yeah.
way that this opening sort of couple of rounds has panned out for Yorkshire. I'm going to say that I think Sale might be able to put their flag in the ground in round three and get a win over Yorkshire.
Yeah, I think I'm probably with you. I mean, on paper, the Sale team will be a very strong one. But probably the biggest challenge they're going to face, other than Yorkshire's quality, will be being able to just keep a lid on it. Yeah, they're going to be that when they come out that first 10 minutes, it'll be hard to keep the emotions sort of on an even keel, just because they've been chomping at the bit for weeks now to get out there. So that'll be probably the big message to them is just forget the frustration, forget how much you want to be out there, and just treat it as another game. And if you do that, then on paper you've got the team for it. The other game on Sunday, an absolute belter. Two
Yeah,
unbeaten sides,
brilliant.
2 wins from two. Quinn's hosting Bath, which actually is probably the way I like this fixture to be set in the calendar,
Yes.
because I think, yeah, we've been waxing lyrical about Bath. They're probably the strongest side in the competition at this stage. But Quins are unbeaten as well and are a very good side. And having that home advantage just tips the scales onto that sort of even level. It's going to be an absolute ripper of a game, right?
It is. I'm really excited for this. I'm so glad it's sort of separated from those Saturday fixtures, and that we can kind of give it a bit more sort of highlighting. And yeah, look, it's going to be such a monumental clash between two teams that have won, but won very differently. Bath, we talk a lot about home and away advantage and whatever. Obviously, they kind of dispelled any sort of issues with their away form in the first round. 33-0 against Exeter was such a statement. But I think this Harlequins team is very different to that Exeter team of round one, and and they could certainly put up a really good fight. I think it's going to come down to the packs
Yeah,
and the forwards and as you said, the 1 to 10 of Bath are so co coherent and solid, and they've still got players to add to that
it's
that are
unbelievable.
injured and
It's
out
unbelievable.
and unavailable. So well, it depends on whether they. I mean, I haven't seen team news for Bath. I don't know whether the likes of Oscar Thomas are sort of close to getting back into contention, coming back from injury. I think Ellis James is out as well.
Yeah, it seems to be.
Uh,
Yeah,
so we're not sure whether those guys are going to sort of poke their heads up in this Academy League, but the sort of deputizers, I wouldn't even call them deputizers because it's their shirts to lose now,
yeah.
are doing so well in their sort of absence. So it's really difficult to not predict Bath because of just how dominant they've been. But as you say, I think this is the game of the weekend.
Oh yeah, it's massive, and I think you're right to highlight the packs. I think the often individual head-to-heads are not particularly relevant, even at the very top end of the game. But one that just fascinates me with this one is the two skippers, where you've got
Yeah,
Rory McKnight for Bath and Elliot Williams for Quinns, likely to be packing down opposite each other at scrum time, at line-out time. You know, they're going to find each other in each other's way in the open field as well. That's an interesting one. It wouldn't also surprise me if that ends up being an England under-18 combination at some
yes,
point in late March. So I'm really excited to see those two go head to head, but also just as you say, the whole packs. Probably, I mean, unusually, Quinn's pack is probably their strength at the moment.
yeah,
Yeah, they've got some stardust in the back line, but actually, it's a really neat and tidy pack. So in a weird way, Bath Quinns, which you expect to be almost a barbarian's game, is probably going to be based around getting that sort of grunt work going, and then the sort of the big stuff will be decided by the guys outside. But it,
yeah,
it will probably be very much a bit of the old adage of the forwards win the game and the backs decide by how much. I
yeah,
suspect, which makes it fascinating. I mean, Bath are the favourites because Bath are probably the favourites for the league and the reigning
mm,
champions and all the rest of it. But then they're not going to be favourites by much. Quinns are not going to be a pushover here. And if it becomes an arm wrestle, Quinns have got experience 2 games in a row
yeah.
of getting through an arm wrestle.
That's very true.
Bath haven't been challenged yet in sort of over the course of the entire game. So it'll be an interesting one. But yeah, I mean, it'll be a surprise if Quinns do it. Only in the sense that Bath are probably the overall favourites for the whole thing, but you wouldn't put it past them. It'll be an absolute cracker. And I'll tell you what, while we're leaning on Bath here a little bit, so let's get into the sort of next bit we were going to talk about, which is the England under 20s,
It's a great segue.
because that is a team that is absolutely stuffed full of Bath
Yes,
players, isn't it? Absolutely stuffed full of
and
Bath
they're
players,
they're playing Bath.
they're playing Bath United. It couldn't be better, really, could it? Just sort of, it's probably not worth us spending too much time on the game at the weekend where the 20s beat Cambridge 59-33, a sort of chaotic, madcap, typical first game of the year
Yeah.
kind of game. I think is probably that was almost a get some mileage in the legs game. It felt
Yeah,
like.
and I also think like the logistical side of that game, obviously, so it's supposed to be played at Elytra Fields in Cambridge. The game was then called off, and then about a couple of hours later, it was put back on, but at Bedford Ath, so 45 minutes down the road. It went from a 2 o'clock kickoff, I think, to a 6:30 kickoff. Like it's one of those. It was then ended up being behind closed doors, but not really because those that know Bedford Athletic Ground, it's in the middle of a park, so what you can't really dictate that being behind closed doors because it's
Yeah,
a public park. So yeah, it sort of sprouted up loads of sort of issues and logistical nightmares, would have tested Mark Mapletoft, I imagine. But look, England have released some clips and some try-lights, and what I've noticed from this England under-20 side is they are not afraid to run the ball.
Yeah.
And I think a couple tries came off kick returns. Jack Bracken looks so fast on that right wing. He scored 2 tries where literally it looks like those Cambridge boys were running through pudding. But I know that those sort of wingers are not slow in their own right. So him his pace alongside Charlie Griffin's power, and Jack Kinder has been playing at 15. Usually, I think probably less to see him as more of a winger. But England want that pace
Yeah.
and raw power, and Kinder, Griffin, Bracken as a back three are
No,
just
unbelievable.
athleticism personified, and they'll continue as a little trio in this game against Bath. I mean, it'd be interesting to talk through this 15 because I think there's so many different sort of points to raise
Oh yeah.
across this 15.
Oh, massively. And just while I'm on it, what a busy week it is for Bath as well. So
Yeah,
Friday night, Bath United against England under 20. Saturday, Leinster against Bath in the Champions Cup, and then on Sunday, Bath under 18 against Harlequins under 18. They're busy this weekend at Bath. But yeah, as you say, this England under 20 sides take on Bath United. Well, in fact, tonight you may well be listening to this as you prepare to watch the game.
I thought you were about to say prepare to play. I was like,
Well, yeah, well, I
who
certainly hope
knows?
so.
Who knows is listening?
We better be nice about them just in case. I suppose we might as well start with the captain, actually, Lucas Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, given the captaincy, there's a lot of experience on that field. There's a lot of guys that have led various age group teams, but Friday gets the nod for captaincy and probably a real nod as to how well he's been going this year. You know, getting good game time with Quins, in a position where they've got some very good players, and gets to lead the side after a horrible year last year, just ravaged by injury. But he's the man running the show.
Yeah, he is, and especially considering Archie McParland's joined their training squad this week. I'm not sure what's wrong with him.
Did you see the quote from Mark Mapletoft as well? Joins the Brotherhood.
Joins the Brotherhood, exactly. That's brilliant. I love that, and I think it is a brotherhood because these guys have almost been with each other for so long. Archie McParland's coming back into the mix, and you'd imagine he'll be good to go for the Six Nations, under 26 nations. So to give Lucas Friday not only that starting role, but the captaincy is almost kind of like a nod to those competing nine, Tom Hansen as well, Johnny Wyman, Archie McParland. That's 4 nines that any of them get that starting role. You go, look, fair enough.
It's a strong contingent, isn't it?
And for Lucas Friday to sort of been given that sort of proverbial captain's armband is a sort of sign that Mark Mapletoft really sees a lot in him. There's so many things to talk about in this under 20 squad. I mean, my sort of key headline to be a Chiefs midfield that you kind of alluded to. Not necessarily the midfield that we initially expected. You thought maybe Campbell Riddle would make his way into it in some shape or form. We've got Nick Allison, Nick Lilly. Really excited to see how they go. Ollie Davis is gonna go at 10 as well. That's 10, 12, 13 axis could be fascinating.
Yeah, well, I think if we've spoken about the back three a bit, haven't we? And the pace that they bring and power as well. But with Friday and Davis, I mean, we've spoken about him on previous pods, haven't we? He's just an absolute superstar. But you've got in the half backs and in the back three this sort of attacking, vibrant group. Yeah. And in the centres, I mean this in a complimentary way, you've got guys that really do their job.
Yeah.
And what it's probably going to allow is for the ball just to, when it needs to get wide fast, they've got that there. But actually, when you just need to set a platform and go, and when you just need to make defensive reads, and when you need, all the bits that are not the bits that people love to talk about, but that actually are really important in the journey of becoming a pro player. You've got these two guys in the midfield that I think are going to do a really good job of that, and just allows everyone around them to flourish. I mean, Nick Lilly in particular is he's a good runner with the ball in hand. He's an England under-20 starter. He's an unbelievable rugby player. But what he particularly brings, certainly any time I've watched him, is just this sense of calm and doing his job really well, which allows some of these guys that are your Brackens, your Griffins, Davis, sort of enabling everything from fly half to really flourish. And I think that's going to be, that sort of combination is going to be really exciting with this group, and could well be something that, if you look across the team, combinations feel like they're an important part of it. We'll get into the pack in a bit, but there's a couple of combinations in there where you go, okay, right, this is a partnership. This is not just a player. And I think that 10, 12, 13 is definitely that. It's about the combination as much as it is about just how good these guys are.
Exactly. And we've got so much to talk about. I may as well try and get into this pack. Ollie Scholar, bit of a bolter in this England under-20 setup. Sort of come out of nowhere, starting in this game. Fair play to him. He's done so well. Obviously working really hard on the Hampton Saints. He's been playing. He played a couple championship minutes for Bedford. He was involved in the Prem Cup as well. He's now getting his moment at under-20 level. I think it'll be so hard to shift the Ralph McEachran out of that loose head spot. Maybe when we get to the Six Nations tournament, but look, Scholar's got his chance now, and he's well within his rights to take it.
100%. I mean, he's the unheralded one, I suppose, in that trio, isn't he? I mean, I think half the rugby world knows about Tuipulotu and Seller, but very, very few probably outside of those that have had a keen interest in the schoolboy game in the last few years will know.
So me and you,
yeah, basically us two and some other nerds out there. But I think it's a great achievement for him. And also, I really like that he's getting his debut for the 20s alongside Tuipulotu and Seller, who, to reference the combinations again, they're a tried and tested combination over the years at under 18 level, but now at Bath and Bath Uni as well. So he's got something he can. He's got two guys that know each other. That makes life a lot easier when you're just one person that's coming from the outside, as opposed to three guys all trying to work a new dynamic. So I think that's massive for him.
And that's a heavy front row, a really big, powerful front row. I mean, the replacement front row is almost quite dynamic. Gully, McEachran, Raymond, the sort of three sort of players that can really move around the park. Obviously, Kepu can almost do both, but the three that are starting are going to look to try and beat up this Bath side, and it's something that can complement quite nicely with the all-star sort of Harlem Globetrotters aspect of that England backline. You need those powerhouses in the pack to sort of get you through. And does powerhouse describe anyone better than a combination of Olamide Sadeki and Junior Kapoku in a second row? Holy.
They are special. I mentioned it before, the under-18s tour in South Africa in 2023, I think it would have been. Sadeki and Kapoku had South Africans sort of open-mouthed at their size, their power, their quality. If you're doing that as England under-18s in South Africa, you're pretty special. Not many. There's no harder nation on earth to impress as a second row than them, and they were impressed. And obviously they've got bags of experience now. I mean, Kapoku is starting week in, week out for Racing 92. Yeah. Sadeki made his debut for Sarries last week or the week before?
A couple of weeks ago,
he's obviously tracking very nicely as well. That this is a well-known second row partnership. And if we think about what we've been saying about the 20s, about how it's now becoming a team to go down and watch, in these two, and indeed, Kepu's one of the most talked about players probably in the world at the moment. Certainly in the age group sense, you've got a bunch of guys in that England team that people really know and
Yeah.
people really want to go and watch. I mean, Kapoku alone, just for almost the sort of unknown quantity, despite being known, of playing away in France and
Yeah.
coming back and all the rest of it
Well,
is
he made
exciting.
he made his point quite clear on the rugby pod this week. I don't know if you've heard this, where he
Yeah,
basically just called out Maro Itoje, Nikasikwe, and said, "I'm coming for you. You're on my list." I think he said,
I think
in
it was.
terms
Yeah,
of
you're on my list.
in terms of players that he wants to he wants to try and better in an England sense. And look, that will mean that most likely, if he wants to travel, if he wants to get towards sort of senior honours and senior caps, he's gonna, as things stand, have to head back to the Gallagher Premiership, which is another question in itself. Where does he land? But
Who's
but
got cap space as well?
yeah, exactly. Well, I
Right.
think people would make cap space for someone like Junior Kapoku. But look, I mean, what he's going to do in this England under 20 setup is almost like a bit of a show reel for these Gallagher Premiership sides, that he'll be able to go, look, this is what I can do with all of the players that you currently have contracted. And say, look, if you want me, look, I'm better than this guy, I'm better than that guy, and he's gonna stake his claim. And look, as long as he backs it up, it's brilliant.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what as well, just looking at that combination there, 11 caps each, that's
Yeah,
experience as well. I mean,
experience, yeah.
these are guys that know what they're doing. It's Seller as well, actually, a tight head with 9 caps as well. There's a lot of uncapped players in this team, but there's also a core, particularly in the pack, that really have been around the block a little
I
bit.
mean, the second most cap player in this team, Josh Bellamy's on the bench.
Yeah,
That shows you the depth in quality that this under 20 side has.
massively. But yeah, I mean that type five. I mean that
Brilliant.
very few teams in the world will be competing with that, and probably Bath United will be looking at that and thinking that's where we need to try and get on top if we're going to win this
Yeah.
game, and be under no illusions. Bath United will want to win this game because there are senior pros in that side, and they do not want to be beaten by what they will be no doubt describing in the changing rooms as a bunch of young upstarts.
Yeah.
They want to be on top, and obviously with that, four Bath players in the lineup in Griffin, Tuaplotu, Seller, and Timmins in the back row that we'll get onto. There's going to be more than a bit of healthy competition and niggle, I'm sure. But looking at that back row, actually, with Timmins at 6, Sam Williams at 7, Kane James at 8. Sam Williams probably, much like Scholar in the front row, is probably the bolter here, and that there's so much depth in the flank for England. But Williams gets the nod.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that as a back row, it's a really nice, really well balanced back row. You've got three players that can almost play across 6, 7, 8 in themselves.
Yeah,
Kane James, I think, scored twice against Cambridge. So knows how to find the line. One of them, I think, was off a charge down, in which he raced, and it was a kick through that was misgathered by the Cambridge fullback, and James was quickest onto it. Like he almost plays as like an outside back in the pace that he's got, and his prowess across the pitch. In that sort of slight frame that's kind of becoming the trend for an England under 20s back row. As you need one with sort of like a slight frame that can still put tight heads down on their backside.
yeah, sort of 200-meter runner
Yeah,
kind of thing.
exactly. So yeah, he's a good example alongside of your nails for breakfast in Timmins, and as you say, the sort of Bolter and Williams. There are so many different sort of things to sort of pick up on in this under 20s setup. And the bench is covered in more stories, and if we spoke about them all, we'd be here for days. I mean, Tom Burrows returned to that setup. That there's he, the fact that he's on the bench in an England under 20s set, you'd be like, what? Why? And then you realize it's Sadeki and Kapoki's competing with, and you're like,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, fair enough. You didn't think you'd be able to find someone taller and bigger than Tom Barrow, but well, you found two of them.
apparently there's two.
Like
Yeah,
exactly. So there's so many angles, and that Bath United, from what I've seen, haven't listed a team. They're probably like, oh God, we've now got to play about 50 players across the 3 days. So yeah, they'll be scrambling. But look, they'll bring out a good side. Shame, quite a lot of them are wearing England shirts. Some of their best players, Charlie Griffin, Kepu, Billy Silla, sort of
yeah.
made for
I wonder how
made
that
for those sort of
conversation
players.
went. I wonder
Yeah.
whether Bath tried to get those guys on their side. I mean, I suppose they did they want to give away all of that? Who knows?
Exactly, but I wonder whether they might call on the uni, and there's some potentially some uni of Bath players that aren't necessarily contracted. That look, Bath United, to play for Bath United, I doubt you need to be contracted. I think there's going to
No.
be element, especially if they're playing Leinster on the weekend. I think
Yeah,
there's going to be
it'll
elements
be
of
much like the old A League, where I'm sure
yeah,
there'll be a
invitational.
good number of invitational and guest players
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, the
and
one thing that really jumps out at me when you look at this team sheet from sort of 1 to 27,
mm,
27 because there's extra players on the bench rather than
yes,
I don't know what I'm talking about. Although I'm sure I also don't know what I'm talking about. But the thing that jumps out to me is there are three teams, four teams, maybe you could say, that are very, very represented. Obviously, in the starting lineup, Bath are heavily represented.
yeah,
Saracens haven't got loads of players, but they've got a
no,
good
just
number of
three, I think.
players.
Yeah,
Particularly when you then go down to the bench as well. There's a couple of Saracens boys in there. Exeter Chiefs as well, and then Sale Sharks. You know, almost the entire bench is Sale Sharks. But those four clubs pretty much dominate, and I wonder if that gives us a window into what does the next 5 years of Premiership rugby look like. Are we now looking at that we're likely to see Bath extend the quality that they've got at the moment at first team level? Certainly, if we think about what we've just been saying about the under 18s, the answer is yes. Saracens with good quality coming through. Exeter, who probably need some players to come through, have got players coming. You know, they've got three centres in this squad, and then obviously Sale with just players coming out their ears in this under 20 setup. I wonder if that's a little window into what the future of the Premiership looks like, is those four sides looking strong.
yeah, absolutely. And what we've got to name here is there are actually, which is so unheard of, there are some players who can't play in this under 20s friendly because they're playing in the Champions Cup this weekend.
Yes, insane,
I
isn't it?
mean, like Angus Hall, for example, is on the bench for Saracens this weekend, wearing 23 against Cust. So he's unavailable. Look, would he even make it into that back line?
And in what
Um,
position?
exactly. There's so many
Extraordinary.
stories. Look, I think yeah, Sale have got 7 across this 27.
Yeah,
Yes, quite a lot of them named among the replacements, but those guys were kind of starting in the Cambridge game. I think that's
yeah.
just the way that Mapletoft has sort of decided these fixtures. He's going to see a few boys against Cambridge and a few boys against his Bath team. So yeah, look, it's going to come down to who can retain these players, because I think a lot of them will see what like Junior Kapoku's doing and go, oh, actually, I can still play for England at age grade level and go and make
Yeah.
quite a lot more money in Racing and do very well. Look, I think he's a one-off case, and you have to be of his sort of level. Not many people are, but there's going to be conversations had, and it's gonna be quite an interesting few years for Premiership rugby, in that it's not going to be a case of can you bring in the best quality from different areas of the world to make this league the best in the world. They're going to have it on their doorstep. It's going to be about keeping it.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to what we said on the very first episode of this series, where a happy consequence of the reduction down to 10 teams and tight salary caps and stuff is more opportunity for young guys. It's meant that a lot of these under 20s are household names, but it's also meant that these guys have a huge amount of experience, and those that have deep academies, you know, look at Sale here, look at Bath, look at Sarries, look at Exeter, are going to find themselves with a lot of success because they're going to have these young guys coming through initially relatively cheaply, and it could work wonders. I mean, Saracens are the great example. Look at what they achieved with that group of academy lads from the sort of late 2000s,
Mm.
who fundamentally were the core of what happened over the course of the next 10 years. It's if you can get it right, you can take you a long way. And Sale certainly looking very strong, and with a few superstars amongst them. But as I say, Barthex to Sarries as well. Speaking of Sarries, the New England captain is a Saracen,
Yes, it
as
is.
is the old England captain, to be fair.
As is the one before. So they've gone back to back
They,
to back, haven't they?
they've got a production line going. But for the purposes of the sort of stuff we talk about, the really
Mm.
interesting thing about Maro Itoje is that 10 years ago he's the England under-20s captain. And 10 years on, he gets the big gig, which sort of got us kind of thinking, who from, well, between this year's squad and I guess last year's squad that actually won the World Under-20s, who in 10 years' time could be the man that is replicating that sort of Maro Itoje glory that he now has.
Yeah, I think when you try and think about replicating someone like that, it's hard to divert from the position that Maro Itoje plays, just because that's kind of where your brain goes to. But I think for me, the first name that came to my brain was Finn Cardiff, and the leadership that he held throughout his time with England under 20s. Not necessarily, as we say, a household name, especially not in the sort of the back row type five that England have been able to boast over, England under 20s have been able to boast over the last couple of years. But God, he holds such gravitas, and Leicester, along with Saracens, are known for creating leaders,
Yeah.
and bringing leaders to their academy. And he's had a fair few minutes in the Premiership and the Champions Cup and in the Premier League Cup this year, kind of. And I think he's going to be another slow burn. He's not going to be a burst on the scene like Maro was. Sort of, I think Maro won the under 20s World Championships in 2014. This was back when under 20s not necessarily starters in Premiership rugby like they are today. And then 2 years later, he was named man of the match in the European Champions Cup final. So that was in the space of 2 years. That was such an anomaly,
Yeah.
and I think Cardiff won't necessarily be a burst on the scene player and be sort of, as you say, in the next 2 years winning sort of Premiership titles with sort of lifting the trophy at Twickenham, but he will bleed himself into that England squad in due course, and I think as soon as he gets there, people will start looking at him towards sort of leadership values and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he's a player as well that fits a role that's certainly very much in vogue at the moment. Sort
Yeah.
of six that's a bit of a lock. Um,
Line out jumpers. I mean, if look,
well, exactly.
if Steve Borthwick is still in an England role in 10 years' time, I mean, I'll give you the money myself. But if he is, his favorite thing, he loves having three line out jumpers
Yeah,
in a team. That's why we're seeing we'll most likely see Ollie Chessum at six throughout the course of this Six Nations tournament, and why we may not see Ben Earl and Tom Willis in the same team because they're neither, like Tom Willis is kind of like a half line out jumper, but neither are out and out line out jumpers. He loves having three line out jumpers.
yeah.
Cardiff is an out and out line out jumper, and that at test level is so important. If you can have a six that can jump and can lead line outs, it's massive.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, he's in a club at the moment that's got players that can do that coming out their ears. I mean, you look
Yeah.
at almost his direct rival for the shirt, really, in Ollie Chessum, who probably plays in the row more often than not for Tigers, but from an England perspective is a six, which it is massive. George Martin as well, who he's now established as a second row, but spent a lot of time as a six, and even has caps for England in that back row. And Chessum's older brother, younger brother rather, Lewis is obviously going to start edging into that second row. So
Yeah,
there's a
it's just
lot.
it's
There's a
interesting.
lot in there, isn't there?
Have you heard the story about Lewis Cheston this week?
I haven't.
There's talk that he might go to Japan. He's been
Fair.
offered a move to Japan, And that's a complete tangent that maybe something we can talk about later on, and links in again with Junior Kapoku and
Yeah,
these and kind of what we were talking about earlier. You need to retain these players. Lewis Chesham is a former age grade captain that could potentially fall by the wayside because he's not necessarily getting Premiership minutes. He's played a lot for Nottingham, but he's not getting Premiership minutes. So it's looking elsewhere, and Japan would want to put their hand up for a 6 foot
yeah,
six
man,
massive
it's
lock.
such a difficult one for Tigers as well because we've just listed a bunch of players there that are all
Hmm?
between 18 and 24.
Yeah, they're not
Two
going
of the,
anywhere. They're
two of
not
them
they're
are
not
England
of different
internationals.
generations. Yeah.
One of them's, as we're saying, potentially a future England captain in 10 years if we sort of continue with the kind of game we're playing there. That it's not for want of trying to try and squeeze someone in. You've got Cameron Henderson as well, who's
Yeah.
probably on the verge of getting back into the Scotland squad. Yeah, the depth at Tigers is massive in the second row, and if you're a player who's going, well, I need a game somewhere.
Mm.
Why not? I suppose,
Why not?
and this is this. It is a good stage of your career to do it. Go and get some game time. Go and get some experience. Come back more rounded and ready for caps.
I'm gonna put the pressure on you to name someone other than, and I'm glad I got Cardiff in early,
That was
so
well
that
played.
so that I could go. Oh, what about you, Angus? And now you can't say Finn Cardiff. You're gonna have to say someone else, and I think it's gonna be quite difficult because I think he's quite a front runner. But then there's about five or six that then are sort of fixed within someone that could feasibly make that Maro Itoje mold.
Well, if I'm going to go down the sort of you've gone down the road of someone who's going to definitely be a sort of captain, a leader, and an inspirer, but maybe more of a slow burn. I'm going to go into the current England under 20 squad,
Yeah.
and I'm going to look at who could do a Marrow where within almost weeks of being an under 20 star, they're a Premiership star, and I'm going to look to Saturday's hooker and
Yes.
Kepu Tuipulotu, who schoolboy captain, under 18s captain. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets a nod at some stage for 20s captaincy. So he's got the leadership, but he's also probably one of those that's got the ability to burst into the top tier
Absolutely.
and get into and on a wave of momentum get himself into the England team, a la Maro Itoje just after the 2015 World Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is a leader and he's a frighteningly good player.
Yeah.
The probably the challenge is the front row. There's so many elements to your game you've got to get right before someone takes a chance on you to get you into the team. Even Maro to an extent suffered from that early on, where people were questioning whether he could call a line out and things, which always struck me as a bit mad. I mean,
Yeah, because now you wouldn't imagine a line out called by England that wasn't called by Maro Itoje.
yeah,
So there you are.
exactly. But there are those technical requirements that sometimes can get in the way of just getting a good player in. But I think 10 years time, could you see Kepu as an England captain for sure? And
Yeah.
can you see him following a similar kind of trajectory to Amaro for sure?
Yeah.
I think there's plenty there.
I think you've struck gold there a little bit as well. In that something you really mentioned is that we've got to look at the England senior squad now, and where are the holes? Where are the discrepancies? England have obviously named their Six Nations squad. They've named three hookers, two of them in their late thirties, late thirties in rugby's terms, early thirties.
31 in the other world.
Yeah, 31, late 30s. Look, it's yeah, by the by. But yeah, Luke Cowan-Dickie is, you'd imagine, third choice hooker, and Jamie George, who obviously got the captaincy taken off in this week. What we're hearing is it's because he's not guaranteed to start. So you've got two players there who are almost sort of drifting away from their dominance of that shirt over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Theo Dan, look, you'd imagine, is sort of the regeneration of that Jamie George figure, in that he's going to be starting for Saracens, going to be starting for England for the next sort of 5-6 years to come. So we need the repeat of the Karen Dickey George battle that we've had for the last
Yeah,
sort of however many years, and it could be a Tuipulotu Dan that we're talking about, and I think the door's ajar. I think Curtis Langdon could potentially be a name that could almost uh, be a spanner in the works for that. But again, he's sort of in the latter stages of his career, so. Um, so yeah, there's a door open for a
yeah.
top class
I mean, well, if you think
hooker in
about
this.
it, when you hooker's one of the few positions in a squad where you tend to have more than you necessarily need, and that you tend to have three in a squad because it's such a vital position.
Yeah,
And there's not, as you say, there's not that many hookers around. Theo Dan is, you know, once Cowan, Dickey, and George have moved on, Theo Dan's the next cab off the rank. But around there, you've got what Curtis Langdon,
Nathan Gibbaloo,
Jamie Blamire.
Jamie Blamire.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a group of guys who've got some caps who are no longer young, I suppose is probably the best way of putting it,
Mm.
and then a jump. So there, yeah, even if you try to get a Langdon or a Blamire or someone like that into the squad, there's still going to be that third spot available.
Yeah,
And given that, yeah, all the talk of the last couple of years has been that hooker at age grade level is just stacked with talent. There's going to be a space there, and Kepu, something's going to have to go drastically wrong for that space not to get taken up by him. And it does seem as
yeah,
though England have won the battle with Wales to get his services. Although I do wonder if someone goes down during the Six Nations, I do wonder if Warren Gatland might get on the phone and just say, "Listen, mate, there's a cap available."
yeah. I think it was recently. Warren Gatland is kind of throwing absolutely everything and anything at this Wales squad. I don't think there's any coherence across his squad selection. Some players are saying, "Oh, we're building for the future," then brings in Liam Williams instead of Cameron Winnett, and then look, I mean, we could go into that for donkey's years. I mean,
Max Llewellyn not getting enough touches against South Africa. Against
yeah,
South Africa.
it's despite being the Gallagher Premiership's top try scorer, and instead he's sort of bringing in some unproven assets. Oh my goodness, there's so much there. So yes, I agree. I wouldn't be surprised if Gats gets on the phone to Kepu and says, "Look, fancy it because we've got nothing left," and I'm at the table again and I want to roll the dice, but I think Kepa will see the faith that Mark Mappletoft will want to put in him, and subsequently Steve Borthwick, and that's where I think his allegiance should and would lie.
So we've got Finn Carnduff and Kepu Tuipulotu as two potential Maro Itojes in 10 years on, potentially getting the England captaincy. One more to throw at you,
Mm.
who's a wild card in the captaincy stakes, but I definitely think not a wild card in the will be an international possibly by the end of this year. To be honest,
Yeah,
Henry Pollock
yeah,
in the back row, captain England under 18.
hmm
So he's got a bit of leadership experience. More of a flamboyant character than the other two, I think it would be fair to say.
good word. Yeah,
But sometimes that works. We've
mm.
seen we've seen some flamboyant captains, and first job of being a captain is to make sure that you're a player that's going to get selected, and
Yeah,
he's going to get selected.
yeah, he is. And I think again, we obviously spoke about it with Finn Cardiff, and it's the antithesis of that hooker role. There is just so many options in that England squad and set up for back rowers and second rowers in the England senior squad at the moment. There are so many, but if there's one person that's going to go, actually, I think I should be taking that over all of you, it's Henry Pollock. And look, as you say, I think his leadership's unique. But it's certainly there.
It's follow me, lads, isn't it?
It
It's
is. It is. And he's already made himself very, very aware and very vocal within the Northampton Saints setup. You always catch him on the ref mic during up his players before a scrum. And he was like he was doing it to like Courtney Lawes led them Alex Waller last year. So they said, "Come on, boys," and you see sort of Courtney will sort of look over him to go, "What are you doing?" Because Courtney Lawes was a prime example of a head down sort of follow. Yeah,
Okay.
lead by example.
A guy who doesn't need to be told
Yeah,
to G up because
especially by an 18, 19-year-old. But he's in a new transitional sort of period within the Northampton Saints back row. I think it's come at a really nice time for him because he's going to basically become a staple of that back row now and for the foreseeable. He'll get multiple minutes. He will become an England player, as you say. I think it will definitely. If it doesn't come this Six Nations, it will definitely become in Argentina, at this summer tour, um, because they'll just wanna lock him down, and yeah, he very well could be another wild card, as you say, for that captaincy role.
yeah, and if he doesn't get minutes down in Argentina in the summer, then potentially he's a future Scotland captain.
There we go.
He's still got that, and he's still got that in the locker. Right, couple of bits just to finish off because
Yep.
otherwise we could be here for hours and hours and hours. Asher, it was speaking of that England squad for the Six Nations. Asher Poku Forjaw is in the squad
Yep.
properly. Unbelievable achievement, first of all. But probably the bit that it makes me think about is are we in a bit of a golden age of youth front row rugby in England?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got him, you've got Finn Baxter, Fasogbun. We look at this 20 side with Seller and Raymond and McEachran and Scholar. It feels like
Feels
in a
good.
position where there's been a bit of a sort of gap of quality or real top end
Mm.
quality. There's a lot coming through now.
And I think so. Not to shout out, I'd say a rival podcast, not really. They're well ahead of us at the moment. For the love of rugby, Dan Cole
Mm,
was speaking this week, saying that Steve Borthwick basically run, obviously not selected in this England squad. Steve Borthwick basically running up, saying, "Look, I don't think you're going to make the match day 23, and I also I don't think at your age you should be basically holding tackle bags across the Six Nations. You need time to put your feet up and relax." Dan Cole said, "Fair enough," which signifies that Apoku Forjaw seems to be, well, in Steve Borthwick's eyes, ahead of Dan Cole at this stage,
mm.
which is absolutely massive for him. Um, he can obviously he's such an asset and he can play loose and tight. I'd imagine that won't necessarily translate to test match level because nothing ever really does. Fluidity in positions kind of stops when you get to test match
Yeah.
because of the nature of it, especially in the front row. But yeah, he signed a new deal with Sale Sharks this week as well. They penned him down, yeah, I imagine, for an increase of money as well. So it's a good time to be a Poku Forjaw. And look, I think that 18 shirt, maybe even a starting that tight starting tight head for England, Will Stewart, a Poku Forjaw seems to be the tussle, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean it's just it's a hell of an achievement, but yeah, it's exciting times going forward because it's been the position of a bit of struggle for
Mm,
probably 5 6 years now. You know, you kind of look at it, you go Dan Cole, Carl Sinclair were there for a very
yep.
long time. Sinclair went abroad. Cole's now 47, and you know, Will Stewart sort of on the quiet has got about 50 caps.
Yeah.
But actually, yeah, there does feel like there's a gap there, and you know, there's some exciting guys coming through, which is going to be cool. Exciting guys coming through in Wales as well.
Yeah.
Warren Gatland's Tom Bowler has thrown up Ellis Mead.
Yeah,
It's
what a story that is. I mean, we covered it on the clubhouse this week because it was such an eye-catching story. Look, we see a lot of bolters in international rugby, but not necessarily bolters that do so well in one country, then get picked for another.
yeah,
And that obviously Ellis Mee was he was at still I think still he's at Nottingham Trent. He's still
yeah,
finishing his degree. He's still look he could turn up for Bucks any moment now. That's kind of the quality that he has. And yeah, he was playing for Nottingham Trent sort of 18 months ago. Then got a deal with Nottingham Rugby. Obviously got to play in the Prem Cup against Leicester. I think that was his debut. And has then did really, really well last year. I think got in the team of the year for Champ. Then Scarlets went, yeah, look, Ellis Me goes with the name. You're clearly Welsh qualified. Come over, do your thing here. He's had a great sort of 6 months with Scarlets, and has then got into this England setup, this Welsh setup, as a kind of a beacon of hope in what is a pretty foggy area for Wales. That back three,
Yeah.
like he's Rio Dyer, nowhere to be seen. Cameron Winnett, nowhere to be seen. There's another one who I've forgotten is nowhere to be seen. But on that wing for Wales, that we've been recording this now for an hour and a bit, so excuse me that I can't list off absolutely everyone. But like he'll have Josh Adams and Liam Williams in this
What a pair to learn off.
Wales Six Nations squad. So even if he doesn't get a minute, he's basically going to get a masterclass from one of the best finishers in world rugby in Josh Adams at his peak, and one of the best back three players I think that the Northern Hemisphere has seen in such a long time in the bomb diffuser in Liam Williams.
Yeah.
Who already at Saracens has come straight back into the mix and has basically taken the likes of Angus Hall, Tobias Elliott under his wing, and you can see that because those boys have improved so much since Williams has come back. So yes, I think it's an incredible time for him. But what a rise, and just shows anything can happen in terms of age grade and international rugby.
Oh yeah, absolutely amazing. Absolutely delighted for him, and a little sign if you're Welsh qualified, cool, keep your eyes open, keep your ears to the ground, because tell you what,
put your phone on ring, because who knows?
Warren Gatland is clearly paying attention, no matter what the level, no matter where you are.
I'm Welsh qualified. I've got I keep on checking over my phone just in case. I mean,
well, I'll tell you what, they're looking for a fly half, so
yeah.
you might be in with a gig.
I know it'd be pretty disappointing for my tier 9 English club that I'm playing for this weekend if I'm not available because I'm training down in Cardiff. So
they'll enjoy the publicity they get off the back of it.
Well, I mean, that some note to end on? Will Robert's potential bolter for the Wales Six Nations squad?
I mean, it's something. It's what it is. It's certainly something. I'm only jealous that the chances of a 36-year-old getting a call up anytime soon are
Scotland are the most settled side in the Six Nations according to most of the press. So I think
exactly. My daydreams nowadays focus on whether or not I could perhaps land a coaching role, which is really quite depressing. Right, that probably is us though. We've had some thoughts and suggestions from people online from previous episodes, which we will get into probably next week or the week after. But just wanted to touch on this from Jonathan Williamson, just as a little thought of something we're going to get into probably on the next one. Thoughts on the rise of the ace colleges and the potential decline of normal in quote marks schools. Making the point that we made earlier that Quins particularly are very much dominated by their ace side. We've touched on it a little bit. We'll probably get into that in a bit more detail in that break week, but that's definitely an interesting topic. But please do keep your ideas and thoughts coming in, and let us know who you think could be an England captain in 10 years' time, or indeed a Scotland captain in 10 years' time, or a Wales one.
Or Welsh.
If you can predict the way that Welsh tombola is going to end up, then you're a better man than either of us. But that's quite enough for another week, because we've been banging on for hours now. So thanks for joining me again, Will. Very good stuff.
Pleasure. Absolutely love it.
Make sure you get in touch with those questions. As we say always, it's on all platforms at NextGen15, at NextGenXV. And indeed, get Will directly on the Clubhouse at NextGen15 Clubhouse, where he's going to be diving deep into whoever comes out next from Warren Gatland's list of endless names, but also some of that England under-20 stuff as well that's going to be coming up. But in the meantime, enjoy your weekends, enjoy all the rugby, and if you find yourself in Bath over the course of this weekend, there's plenty to watch, so do go check it out. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks very much for listening. Well done, mate. Good stuff.
Love
No,
that. Thank you.
no idea how long we went on for because I don't know how long my delayed start was. So
No. Yeah, I think it probably in 90 minutes, which is not too bad, but I hope that was it was certainly kept me entertained. So
no, exactly. Well, there's plenty to get through. Plenty to get through.
exactly.
But no, that's cool. We'll get into something a bit more settled now that it's kind of
Yeah,
now that I'm
yeah,
back
that's
and all
good
the
with
rest of
me.
it.
So I mean, this week has been pretty mental. I've officially sort of signed the deal, as it were, with Saracens to go full time.
Signed on the dotted line.
Signed on the dotted line. I had a bit of a weird 2 days where Saracens offered me a full-time position, and then Northampton Saints offered me a full-time position 2 days later. That they were not going to
Did,
advertise.
did you go full Phil Morrow and see if you can do both?
Thought about it. But it was like proper London buses where I've been looking for a full-time role in rugby in literally for the last 6 months, and two came in 2 days. But I had to say, I mean, if you're keen, if there's one now going at Northampton Saints. But yeah, I've agreed stuff with Saracens, so I'm going full time there. But that hopefully shouldn't rock the boat too much with what we're trying to do. Definitely not a podcast because it's
Yeah.
as you say, it's so easy and accessible for us to do because it's just two of us that we sort of make it work between it. It's like Wednesdays and Fridays, I think we work from home anyway, sort of regardless.
So we can find a bit
I'm
of
always
space.
keen to find space and
Yeah.
Clubhouse stuff. Look, it's got no algorithm to it. It's got no rhyme or rhythm like that Ellis Me stuff. I literally put together within a couple minutes, and it's got I think 5,500 likes or something like that. So look, it's
These things
never know.
never make any sense
They
whatsoever.
never make any sense.
It's
So,
just-
and there's going to be so much content that we can just sort of I can spring up impulsively over the next couple of weeks. So I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, I'm speaking with Jacko about Seaford. I know it's going to be a combination of Roberts's. I don't know which ones.
Oh yeah, could be anything.
Could be anything. Could be the dynasty. We're trying to figure that out between all three of us because I think on the Saturday, all three of us are commentating, or doing sports media, but in completely different places, and then we all have to get down to Seaford. So
Ideal.
I'm trying to sort that out, but it's an absolute nightmare.
We'll work it out, mate. We'll work it out.
Exactly. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, I think that's sort of it for me. But yeah, I was just saying that full time with them. So
That's awesome.
See how it
Congrats.
runs. But thank you, mate. But yeah, definitely won't affect the podcast. Definitely won't affect the Clubhouse stuff. So
Yeah, cool. We'll get it all organised, and we'll get ourselves a regular slot, and we'll, as you say,
nice.
we'll record a bank of stuff at some point as well, just to
that'd be good.
to basically
Cover ourselves.
and free ourselves up. So that should all be good. Cool. Good stuff, mate. Catch you soon.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.
See you later. Bye bye.
Bye.